now. In the next few minutes, we're joined by the special advisor to the governor of Anambra State on political matters, and Dr. Alex is going to be talking to us on the Southeast politics and the challenges facing those who emerge winners from the Southeast gubernatorial election and the general election as well. I still have to look here with us. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us this morning all the way from Anambra State. Right here. We must also hit the ground running by starting taking a cursory look at what transpired in the Southeast, especially in Anambra State with the State of House of Assembly election and a whole lot of issues surrounding it. As the essay to the governor on political affairs, what is your assessment of what transpired? Let's start of the elections in the Southeast generally.
I'm sorry, the volume is very low. Barely hear you. Hello?
Go ahead. Let's take a look at what happened in the Southeast concerning the elections across the Southeast before we narrow it down to Anambra State. We've seen some changes in the outcome of some of these elections. What is your general assessment of the election in the Southeast?
Well, the elections in the South gone, just like all over the country. Generally, it was peaceful. For many who thought it was going to be followed by violence, I guess they were disappointed. Especially in Anambra, it was very peaceful. It was an election between brothers. And of course, some political parties won, some lost. And it's time to count their losses. But primarily, the greatest party that lost in the Southeast was the PDP. I mean, they virtually lost in their National Assembly seats. I guess it's a combination of things that had been done in the past and the way the voters saw them. But the positive side of the election was the fact that it showed that the electorate are quite discerning. They can discern, they can appreciate, they're sophisticated, they can know this position is good for this person. So they didn't just vote on party lines. They voted also on the candidates, quality of candidates you had.
Now to Anambra State, which is your own major area right there. We saw what happened in the State House of Assembly elections with the Labour Party putting up a strong fight in the State House of Assembly. What will you say is really happening in Anambra State? Is there a wind of change that is also sweeping through, knowing that ABGA has always been a strong force in Anambra State?
Well, you know, if you look at the strata of voters you have in the country, you know, more than 65%. And there was a message the youth were trying to carry on in this election, that they had been neglected and they had lost faith in the leadership, political leadership, and they wanted a kind of internal revolution in the political system. And in the South, it's just all over the country. You know, so with that, if you look at the preference they chose for the presidential election, they did choose the presidential candidate of Labour Party. And considering that he came from Anambra State, that should be, therefore, like we always said, that was going to be the epicenter of the tsunami that was to sweep across the country. But because over the years, ABGA had created a sort of movement, not just a political party. ABGA had shown that it was just beyond a political party, but also it represented an ideology. The ideology that the Southeast needed a voice, that the Southeast needed a strong political platform. This was formed sometime in 2002, 2003. And over the years, the party has shown good governance, had delivered good on its promises to the people. So considering that we were the epicenter of the whole thing, we actually did well. Because if you look at going into the National Assembly election, the first phase of the election, the party went in with 2 House of Reps members and came out with 4, with 1 pending in one of the federal constituencies of Baru, where we expect to still win it at the end of the day because we're leading with inconclusive elections. Then you go into the State House of Assembly elections. Yes, we had 24 initially, but going into the election, we had less than 18 because some of them had defected to other political parties. And many of them were 2-timers, so some didn't come back. They were not going for re-election. So when you look at that, and we still had a majority showing where we had 16 of the 30 slots, that showed that the Anambra electorate were able to discern. Because when you look at the presidential election, the Labour Party won with 580-something thousand. And that was predominantly those who voted for ABGA still voted for them. So you look at it, in terms of Anambra State, I would say that ABGA did marvelously well. Of course, let's expand our base into the rest of the Southeast. We had good candidates. We had good candidates in the governorship election for Abia. We had excellent candidates for the governorship election in Ebonyi. Of course, Imo is not up until later this year. So in that situation, we did well. It's unfortunate that we didn't clinch those states, but we won in some few House of Assemblies. And of course, you know, we have a senator from Abia State, Abaribe.
Matters. Do you see this outcome affecting the next election? Because we know that there's going to be a gubernatorial election where hopefully your principal may want to go for re-election. Do you see it affecting the next election?
Well, if you notice what happened in the country, around the country, you know, the young ones were more particular about the presidential election. So it wasn't an issue that Labour Party was a party on the rise. There was a momentum. There was an issue. And that issue was about the presidential candidate. And you can see that, for example, in Anambra State, where he came to campaign for the House of Assembly, I mean, they failed. They only had 7 out of 30. You know? I mean, when he personally went around campaigning. So in the election, like in Imo State, I don't say it's not going to be a major effect. It's still going to boil down to who are the candidates for the election, and then what are the little plays within the party. How did the party primaries go? Was it a peaceful process was candidate imposed? Is there going to be rebellion within the party? Because one of the issues this election has also thrown up is party unity. When party primaries are not properly done, it throws up an opposition. So I believe that the next election will be determined again on the quality of the candidates and then the intricacies that happen within the parties.
Over the years, in the scheme of things, political electoral processes, how will you assess the performance of your party over looking at this federal elections? Sir, should I repeat the question? So how will you assess the performance of your party? The assessment, you assess the performance of your party.
Well, we went into the election as the third largest party in Nigeria, who are having one governor and scores of national tickets. Now, coming back from the election now, we can see that Labour Party has just secured one state, which is Abia State. So for us, I mean, we had not done as we expected nationwide. We had expected to secure much more seats than we did this time around. And we look at it as a working list. But in Anambra State, considering the level of anger that was among the youths in the country, the fact that the young ones, the majority of the voters still went with us and kept faith with us, showed that the governor is doing very well. Because, some of these things will still boil down to what is the governor doing in the state? How is the party? Because the party is led by the governor. What are they doing? And with the massive road infrastructure, with the security that has been provided within the 8 states, before now, we couldn't access 8 states. 8 states were under siege by the unknown gunmen. And for the state to have recovered from it, there's increased movement of activities. Even on Monday, sit at home. If you come to Anambra, there's improved economic activities. So with that, people felt that this was good to go, that the governor had to be supported, that the government of Anambra State, the executive branch was doing well, and that it was good to give them those who work with them amicably.
Your principal talking about the governor was vocal about the chances of Labour Party candidates winning the presidential election. A lot of people are worried that this may stand against him when the time for gubernatorial election will be done. What's your take on this?
Well, what people need to understand, when you look at the outcome of the results, you will discover that what the governor had said came to pass. The message was the truth. The message was misconstrued by those who are so mischievous and bent on not together. You'll be interested to remember that the presidential candidate of Labour Party was the first governor of Abga in Anambra State and left Abga before he headed to P. It was also interesting to note that the two of them are close friends, and the presidential candidate of Labour had always paid even private visits and consulted him. It was also interesting to note that the governor, Professor Charles Chukwumaso, had provided for him, which he had not done for anyone, the facilities of the state government to campaign. So people assumed initially that there was a bond between Abga and Labour. Now, people misconstrued his letter, because in his letter, he did say that Mr. Peter Obi would do well in Anambra State. All he was saying that people missed, the second point he was saying was that we needed to have a discourse. What B? What should our plan B have? Because this one we have as a presidential candidate, he doesn't see a pathway to success, considering the usual Nigerian political landscape. So we needed to have an alternative, that the Igbo leaders needed to come together and have an alternative. In life, whenever you go on any journey, you must have, what are my alternatives? What is my plan B? But of course, that voice was drowned in cacophony of condemnation and saying, oh, that he didn't have spoken at that point in time. Now, coming into the House of Assembly, people assumed, we are dead. PDP, Abuga is dead. PDP already was dead in Anambra State. They didn't sit. But the results have shown it. The outcome has shown that people still agreed with the governor on his developmental projects. People still agreed with the governor, looking back, that maybe we should have had a plan B. And people rallied around him and going forward. And remember, part of his plans are saying that it's about winning the presidential election. It's about what the interest of the Igbos, what is the interest of the Southeast, what is the interest of the zone, of which he's but one of the governors. And he said the critical problems in the Southeast today is security. And that we need to have national methods to deal with that insecurity. And he was suggesting that one of the things we need to do was to bring other non-state actors who are factors in this equation. We need to bring them to the table. And that was where he said that we needed to release Nnamdi Kanu, especially since the courts had granted him freedom. And that if there was any other reason to hold him back, that he was offering as a guarantor to keep him within the state, Anambra State, and present him whenever the federal government needs him. People, again, mischievous persons, said it was all politics. But you can see, even after the election, the governor has continued to send a message. In his congratulatory message to the president-elect of Nigeria, Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, he still reiterated it, that there's need to release Nnamdi Kanu and bring him to the table of discourse so that we can have peace. Because without peace, you can't have progress. The insecurity is creating monstrous loss of goods, of money in the system.
Of politics now, we saw your principal, we saw the governor of Anambra State, Dr. SOLUDO, where he issued a statement directing all commercial banks and before the Central Bank of Nigeria issued a statement of the issuing of old Naira notes. So I want to find out, what is the situation in Anambra State? Is there availability of both the old and Naira notes? Because right now, a serious cash crunch. Is it the same in Anambra State?
Yeah, the cash crunch in Anambra continues, but I will admit that it has eased in some way, but the crunch is still there. The scarcity of the notes is there. The banks are filled with lines of persons trying to get into the bank and trying to access money. But one thing is that we're not seeing the mad sale of Naira. Then people were selling the Naira notes at very huge margins of profit because of their scarcity. That has reduced remarkably. If at all it exists now, it's probably in very few places. And this was what made the governor, because, first as governor, you're governor to make sure that apart from security of life, that life is livable, bearable for people. The hardship was so immense, and he had been careful not to make any public statement because of his former role as a former governor of a central bank. So he was quite mindful of that. And among the committee of governors, they looked up to him for advice on this economic thing, and it was getting too hard. And people had assumed, okay, well, after the presidential election, maybe it will ease. And then there was a Supreme Court judgment and nothing was happening. So after a personal engagement with the CBN governor, he felt that there was need for him to call the banks within his own jurisdiction to order. And then he ordered them that if they failed, they would close down. And he meant it. Unfortunately, thereafter, the CBN had to make its own official statement, and then everything eased up. So in Anambra today, it's better than it was before.
Moving away from that, just before we let you go, one major thing that has been a worrisome trend is the fact that your party, ABGA, continues to remain a regional party. A lot of people thought after over 2 decades of being in existence that ABGA would have moved away from a regional party to national party. What is the problem? Why has ABGA continued to remain in its infancy stage?
I'm sure if you ask this question to a panel of different political leaders in Anambra State, there will be different answers. But my answer to this is this. Before now, the PDP, a party that was birthed before ours, had bought the mind of the Southeast. Remember that the leader of the PDP, one of us G34, was the late Alex Ekweme. And PDP was a melting pot for a lot of Igbo leaders. In fact, many people that are in ABGA today were all in PDP once. They were in PDP at one time or the other. So what happened was that for a long time, PDP continued to hold sway until this election. And I'm sure with what has happened at the national and what has happened at the state, this is a virgin opportunity for ABGA. And we have recognized it. And we intend to do better next election. Like I said, it's a work in progress, because if you look at the performance in Ebonyi, in Abia, and then of course Enugu, where you had Frank Weke Jr., this was an opportunity where we made an impact, but we didn't win the race. And being a work in progress, we're going back to drawing board, and I'm sure in the next 4 years, we'll do much better. But let me say that what I just mentioned to you is the region. Principally because the foundation of ABGA was built as a regional force in the belief that there could be collaborative efforts with other political parties to be able to have a true federation. You know, ABGA didn't go with the mindset it was going to take over the whole country. It was, let's go in partnership with other political parties. And remember that the parties that came about like itself, like the CPC, the ACN, are all gone. They've all merged into national entities. And we have continued to preserve our own and work in collaboration with other parties, but not merge with other parties.
So I told you that's supposed to be the last question. But with the emergence of Peter Obi, a lot of people are saying you have a force that can also determine the shape or the future of this country. Is it not time for ABGA to wake up from initial plans of remaining a regional party to join the big players at the national level? Going about the performance of Peter Obi, lastly for us.
Yes, this question is more like a statement of fact. These are things we are going to, like I said, we're not going to go back after this election and retweak and look at the forces now, because there are new forces on the ground. There are new factors that emanated from this election. And to survive means you have to regenerate. You always have to regenerate and replan and retrieve whatever you've done that you've not done well. So that is also in consideration, but that's a bigger discourse, bigger than myself. I mean, something that a lot more state actors within the political party will look at.
Dr. Alex OBIOGBOLU, for joining us this morning all the way from Anambra State as we take a look at the Southeast election and also the challenges before the newly elected officer. We wish your principal the best and hopefully he can return for a second time.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. It was great talking to you.
Yeah, we've been talking with the special advisor to the governor of Anambra State on political affairs right there.